Good afternoon, everyone. So this is the exam from 2014. Again, the idea is that we are using it as a framework. It's not really end and be all. And if you have any question in the midst of it, please feel free to ask. The first one talks about the idea of comparative method. So this thing. So the question is, what is the comparative method? And we can just use an example, so not this example, but so if you were to look at any relationship, so it's a plot top of this page where we have trait y, uh, reverberations. You have trait y, and there's some other parameter x. So y, let's say, be the brain size, and x being population size. Brain size is. Where's the reverberations? Right. Reverberation, sorry, not reverberations. X and Y being two traits, one Y brain size, X population size. So when you look at different species like humans, gorillas, chimpanzees, the population sizes are different. And if you were to look at the brain size versus that the parameter on x-axis, which is in this case population size, you might see a pattern like this, right? Where there's some relationship between x and y when you look at different species. Now the problem here is that all these, so if you're looking at chimpanzee, human, and gorilla, they're all related to each other. So looking at the phylogeny, it looks like this. So uh, you have human, H, chimpanzee, C, and then gorilla. So chimpanzee and humans are simply like they're not really two different data points in this case because they're sister taxa. So if you were to use the comparative method, you'd uh, group them together as one point. So you would just use the average trait as one point, and then you would end up with two data points. And as you know from statistics, as you decrease the data points, you're going to have less statistical power to claim anything, right? So without this correction for phylogenetic relationships, you are going to get more. You're going to get a stronger signals where none exist, right? If you had a bunch of species that are close related, and then measured one trait against another one, you are going to get a positive or negative relationship. But the problem is a lot of those points are related species, so they're not really statistically independent points, which is the main point in statistics is that you need to have statistically independent points for the test to have any meaning whatsoever. So that was the first one. So we're not going to answer it really because it's more about the concepts. Okay, so next question is about, so it's actually a homework question, I believe. It was a homework question. But it's good to go over it because it's very, very much about something, sexual selection in general terms. So in katydids, the male delivers sperm plus nutrients in the spermatophylex. Females take up the sperm, consume the nutrient, which they use to produce eggs. Graph show data from 4 cages of katydids under high food and low food conditions. This is calling males, a number of males singing courtship songs at any given time. Mating females, the number of times each female mated. Now rejected by male, number of times females approached a male and was rejected. Rejected by F, which means rejected by female. With FM competition, so wherever you have female-female competition. Low food, I think low food is. I should talk about the color. So in control is low food, and extra there's high food. So blue is low food, red is high food. So which of the following statements best describes the control low food? So the idea is that male, so the whole concept is that male delivers a sperm plus nutrients. So in this respect, there's a direct benefit in female choice, right? So the idea was that you either have direct benefit. You either have direct benefit or you have indirect benefit in female choice. So when females try to pick the best male for mating. So in the case of direct benefit, the idea was that you get something that is immediately usable, like food, or you have a territory. So foraging range, you have you can be defended against other predators in the environment. So that is those are benefits that would directly affect the female. We also had, just to remind you, we also had indirect benefits where you had you wouldn't get anything in return for picking the best male, but the idea was that you either get better genes, so by mating with a male that has better genes, patently has better genes, so through the signals that you can analyze, honest signals that is, you could analyze the male and you could realize that that male is the best one as far as genes are concerned. And by mating with that male, you would get good genes. So it was good genes. And we also had the idea, okay, so there's two, so female choice, good genes. And then we also had the case where these are not about good genes per se, but it's about having sexy offspring, sexy sons. That's the idea. It's like the traits that make the parents attractive, they will be transmitted to the next generation, and they're going to be fine. So in this specific example, males do provide a direct benefit. But as you can imagine, the direct benefit is affected by the environment, right? So in the control, so calling males of a number of males that would sing courtship songs, that's pretty low. The number of times each female mates is pretty high in the control, which is control is low food. The percentage of males rejected by females is pretty high in low food, but in high food there's no real rejection. Rejected by a female is high in where there's a lot of food, but when there's very little food, there's low rejection. And there is more female-female competition when there is no food. So in this case, we are looking at this plot. Makes absolute sense that when there's little food, females are going to compete for those few males that have that they can deliver on the nutrients. So males become limiting factor in this case. While in the extra, when there's a lot of food, it doesn't really matter at all. And females don't reject the males because they are competing to get males in the low food scenario. Males, on the other hand, can reject because they are the bottleneck at this point. And females mate multiple times in the low food, and males really don't feel the need to sing. So in the low food cage, uh, males are choosy and females are competitive, which is B. Uh, because as you can see in the low food, males don't even bother to sing, which you would expect. Uh, okay, so reciprocal altruism to evolve all the following necessary. Again, just to remind you, reciprocal altruism. Reciprocal altruism should be known by the other term, which is tit for tat, and the idea being that this for that, or what have you. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. The idea being that you help someone at some point in time, and with a certain delay, you're going to get back the help you gave in the first place. Um, so it's not about uh, long-term benefits. It's not about benefiting the next generation. It's not about the gene pool. It's simply an interaction between two actors where it's a bidirectional relationship, or both of them help each other at different times. So, of course, recipients must have the opportunity to reciprocate later. That's the whole point of tit for tat. There must be some way to detect and punish cheaters, because otherwise, if cheaters go unpunished, um, this system will collapse. So there's no way for cheaters to lose. Then they are going to become the dominant phenotype in the population. Uh, so the benefit of receiving help must outweigh the cost of giving help. Some degrees of relatedness with individuals, so all of them are necessary. So which one is not necessary? So some degree of relatedness is not necessary. So they're not related because it's not altruistic behavior. It's a reciprocal. Uh, it's not this Hamiltonian problem of having individuals make sacrifices without immediate benefit, immediate observable benefit. Which of the following statements apply to heteroparous species? Is it actually? I think we had to 14, 411, and 9. Okay, so 411. So this question is not. Yeah, so it's not included. Okay, 5. In allopatry, males of two species of fish both have black and silver tail spot which the male use in mate choice. Where the two species occur together, one species lacks the black and silver tail spot. Instead, males have a black and silver spot posterior to the eye. Females select males on this basis. What process is called that? So the idea is that when you look at the two species, so let's look at the ranges of these two species. They're using two different circles. And so secondary contact is you had allopatric speciation. Now the green and red populations are in contact. And so they have interaction where they overlap, but everywhere else they don't really interact. So there should be some selection for the sexual selection, or sorry, the mate choice to be more differentiated where they meet, because the idea is that where the two populations overlap, there's chance of hybridization, and the question is, or the problem really is how to minimalize hybridization, because hybridization is a wasteful process by which you produce offspring that are inviable or sterile for the most part, right? And in this case, there are reproductive characters that are displaced. So when you move away from the point of overlap, they have normal. They have very similar mating signals. But when you look at the place where where they overlap, they actually do not have. They do have different ones. So I'm going to say this is a character displacement. So the site of Lauren. Again, if you have any question, comment, just feel free to type during this session. So site of origin of life, where is it? Ocean's edge, unknown, under frozen oceans, near deep sea vents. Actually, this one is pretty odd. I mean, near deep sea vents are pretty good on the slopes of volcanoes. Like that's the most likely. But I mean, isn't it unknown? I'm going to say it is unknown. There are possible sites, but it's not. It could have come from another planet, as far as we know. So I'm going to say unknown. Again, in the origin of life chapter, they postulated a few different possibilities as how life originated. They had the deep sea vents. They had the clay polymerization. Someone's saying a reinforcement. Lawrence says. Sorry. Apparently the chat just updated, so I hadn't seen the few previous one. Lila said that they have to be related. I'm assuming talking about question 3, which is true. So about the reciprocal altruism, they don't need to be related. Lawrence says, would the answer to 5 not be reinforcement? And Kelly says, for 5, would an answer be reinforcement? It was in our homework and the paragraph was reinforcement. I mean, Oh, sorry. Yes, you are right. I think you are. So the process that produced it is reinforcement for 5. The character displacement and reinforcement are very similar in a lot of ways. But reinforcement is probably the correct answer. So the idea is that, again, for people who don't remember reinforcement, the idea is that you have a percentage hybrid between the two populations, and at the beginning it's high, but selection is going to drive it down. So this downward, so over time, the proportion of hybrids is going to be reduced. Somehow, usually prezygotic barriers are being introduced by selection so that you would reduce the number of hybrids. Thanks to Kelly and Lauren. Lauren says, if the question did not mention female selection on the trait, would the answer to 5 be reproductive character displacement? That is a very good question, actually. Females like males on the base of the black surface behind the eye. Actually, I don't know. I don't know if the question, without female selection, would you describe it as reproductive character displacement? I'm not sure. I would think that that would still be reinforcement, but maybe not. Actually, not sure about this one. Okay, the last common ancestor of humans and chimps lived approximately how many times ago? I think from lectures yesterday, you know that Lucy was around 5 million years ago, so and Lucy's human for. I mean, she actually is like, it looks more like a chimpanzee, a bipedal chimpanzee. But you would classify her as a human of some sort, a primitive human. That is. So that was around 4 million years ago, a little bit less than that. The common answer would be between 6 to 9 million years ago. 65 million years ago, that's a little bit too uh, far off. 500, 110,000, those are pretty low numbers unless you are creationist. Like, I mean, even for creationists, 5,000 doesn't make any sense. I guess 10,000 would make sense. And I mean, even that is a big number for a young Earth creationist. So none of these would make sense, even if you were you didn't believe in evolution. So in low density populations, the desert locust is relatively sedentary and does not aggregate in groups. However, under high density conditions, it aggregates into large groups which become highly mobile. This is an example of phenotypic plasticity, adaptive trade-off, evolutionary constraint, genetic polymorphism, a dominant mutation. So it's not a dominant mutation because that doesn't make any sense. It's not a trade-off because it just says that at low density, just they're sedentary and they don't group. It doesn't seem to be a constraint. It's not polymorphism because I'm assuming these are the same individuals in a big population which show the same traits. So it's a phenotypic plasticity. It's a phenotypic plasticity for people not familiar with that concept. The idea is that you have a genotype, right? G. So G1 is the genotype. And usually when you talk about phenotype, there's a phenotype that is related to that genotype, right? So that genotype gets translated into a phenotype. Right, it's your one gene, one protein idea. It's like whatever is the gene, there is a trait associated with that gene, and that's about it. But the idea for phenotypic plasticity is that you have the same gene producing two phenotypes at different times, though. So it's phenotypically plastic in different environments. It's slightly different than pleiotropy, where you have a gene influencing different phenotypes at the same time. It's like a gene at time T1 produces P1, and at time T2 produces P2, right? And so in this case, G1 is the genotype of these locusts, and T1 is when it's low concentration population. The phenotype is a solitary, a non-mobile behavior, as opposed to T2, which is when you put the same individuals in a high density scenario. They show phenotype P2, which is to aggregate and form groups. So that's is a plastic phenotype. So, next page. 9, I remember that was not very straightforward to answer at this point. Which of the following, so 10, which of the following is unlikely to be an altruistic action? 11 is also not the case. So altruistic action, so it should be an action that has benefit someone else at the expense of another. So the helper scrub jays defend the nest from predators such as snakes, lowering their own survival. So that seems like an altruistic behavior. A sentinel meerkat spend time watching for predators feeding. So that's also you're lowering their fitness. Young acorn woodpeckers remain in their parental territory instead of dispersing. I don't understand why is that. How can that be altruistic in any way? Foraging by primary helpers enables a breeding pair of hide kingfishers to rear more young. That's also altruistic. Feeding the young, non-breeding Arabian babblers reduce the time of the breeding pair spent foraging. That's also altruistic. So the only one that is not is C, right? So again, the idea is that whatever an altruistic behavior is wherever you have someone doing something that is not beneficial to them, uh, and someone else, related or unrelated, depending on what sort of altruism it is, gets the benefits, reaps the benefits of the action. Which I'm following is an example of Haldane's rule. So Haldane's rule is a rule JBS Haldane. So the idea is that the whenever you have two sexes, where one sex, so like in human or Drosophila, females are XX, so it's only about the sex chromosome, and males are XY. So usually it's sort of hybrid. So when you hybridize between two species, usually the males are sterile or infertile. So they're dead. That is supposed to be a skull and bones, but drawing with a mouse is not easy. Males are dead or sterile usually, and females are fine, and that's Haldane's rule. But why is that the case? Anyone has any suggestion? Why is it the case that males are more susceptible? Again, in the case, it has to do with the sex chromosomes. So in birds, it's the other way around because females are ZW in birds. So females are the ones that would be more likely to be sterile or inviable when you hybridize two different species of birds. So anyone has any suggestion on why is it that when you have two different types of sex chromosomes in an individual, it's more likely for that individual to suffer the consequence of hybridization? Anyone? You can feel free to type. You can even talk, I think, but I haven't tried that. Any suggestion? Why is XY more likely to be dead or sterile following a hybridization? Anybody? Lauren says something deleterious from the father is given to the heterogametic offspring, cause it to have issues. Muhammad says because it's sex linked. And Kristen is also writing, so I have to wait for her. Lauren is partly correct. Kristen says having only one copy of the X chromosome is insufficient. Need two copies to survive reproduce. Well, I mean, Kristen is who else? Kristen is correct in assuming that. So there's something called dosage compensation. So if you have ever taken genetics, or actually I believe in intro biolab they also do that. So if you take a blood sample, did we do blood samples? No. If you get so scrap the inside of your mouth, so get the cells oh sorry, Sorab says I thought it had to do with the recessive alleles, like heterogamous, like the minus all the one. Okay, so just a point about Kristen's talking about this X chromosomes being insufficient. One, so in dosage compensation, so in humans at least, actually two is too much to have. So in females, in cells, if you stain skin cells from females for X chromosome, you would see that one X chromosome is normal, the other one is like a tiny concentrated blob, is usually referred to as bar body. And that's because two X chromosomes are actually too much. So in each cell, randomly, one of them becomes inactivated. In other organisms, that's a different way because you can't have twice expression without consequences. Lauren suggested something about the deleterious alleles. She's partly right, but Sorab, I believe, has given us the correct answer, the recessive alleles. So the idea being that if you had, that's one way to explain this. I mean, there are different ways. Let's say you had a deleterious allele A in both a male and female. So A on X chromosome, lowercase a. Because Y chromosome really doesn't carry lots of genes, you are more likely not to have any dominant allele to cover should cover the recessive little a. And that should solve the problem. So that's that's why there's this problem that it's more likely for males to have these recessive alleles that happen to be deleterious. And since they don't have another X chromosome, there's no way for a dominant allele on the sister chromosome to be there so that it will suppress the deleterious recessive allele. So that's the reason. And I mean, this question, the hybrid class, so E is the correct answer because males are sterile in the mating between Drosophila mauritiana and Yakubu, or Yakuba, sorry. Which of the following does not support the hypothesis that all existing life on Earth had a common ancestor? RNA is universal information storage molecule. Arbitrary but nearly universal genetic code. So genetic code is nearly universal, that is true. D isomer sugar, these are L isomer amino acids, these are correct. Oh, sorry, Lawrence's concerning question 12. Why would 12 not be C, since Holden's rule is also talking about post-zygotic barriers? C is hypertrophy of ball and spotted weevil. Well, it doesn't, in C, it's correct that it refers to post-zygotic barriers, as does E, but in C it doesn't specify if males die or females die. Like, it just tells you that there is post-zygotic barrier between the two species, right? As opposed to in E, when males cannot sing, and so that is a post-zygotic barrier as well, right? It's a extrinsic post-zygotic barrier affecting males. So universal translation machinery, ribosome, that's not correct. Ribosomes are not universal translation machinery. So C is not relevant. Which of the following statements false? Humans originated in Africa, which is true. We are all Africans. Members of the genus Homo immigrated from Africa more than once. Well, let's leave that there. Anatomically modern humans dispersed out of Africa approximately 100,000 years ago. That sounds about right. Several branches of hominin clade. All of these became extinct. That's true. At the time, there were several, like Homo habilis, Homo ergaster, they used to live together. Anatomically modern humans don't have precise behavioral modern humans. That's true as well. So you have archaic humans. Members of the genus Homo. Actually, all of these are correct. Homo immigrated from Africa more than once. That is true. That is true. So again, so humans originated in Africa, true. Members of the genus Homo immigrated from Africa more than once. Yeah, Homo sapiens and Homo erectus. Anatomically modern humans dispersed out of Africa approximately 100,000 years ago. They're roughly the same. Several branches of hominin clade. All of these became extinct. Oh, is this right? Yeah, because I mean the humans still exist, so that's like, there is still one. So then D. That's kind of lame. But hey, that is not. That was several years ago, so. Biological species concept. Which of the following applies to which of the following? Lawrence says that D is listed as correct. Where is D? Yes, so yes, D is. So then D is correct. That seems a little bit weird, but I mean, this is the least. I mean, Lawrence says I believe the answers. Why is C the answer? That like anatomically modern humans dispersed out of Africa 100,000 years ago. Like that is true, I think. think I have read a few books on human evolution. I think it's true. So I don't know why you would say C is the correct answer. No, no, what? No, no, no. Anatomically, Christian says the PowerPoint from Placitic they migrate from Africa, 1.8. That is Homo erectus. So Homo erectus came out of Africa once. No, no. So for lower-rank Christians, so the out of Africa theory, so an out of Africa theory, or hypothesis rather. So the idea is that humans came out of Africa, right? But humans came out of Africa twice, as far as I understand. There's Homo erectus came out of Africa around like more than a million years ago. So 1.5 by 1.8. So they went out of Africa, went to Europe, became Neanderthals later, went to far east, became the pygmies. That's where they used to live. Homo, was it Rodolphoniensis? I think the pygmies, the hobbits, also known, like these are very short people, used to live until I believe 10,000 years ago in Far East Asia. So they went out of Africa once, then Homo sapiens went out of Africa. That is around 100, slightly more than 100,000 years ago. Homo sapiens went out of Africa. And they populated different areas, went to Europe, and Neanderthals went extinct because they couldn't compete with Homo sapiens. They also, so all the other species of humans, they went extinct except for Homo sapiens. So that is why D is incorrect. And C is correct because the modern human species, as we know it, the species we belong to, that came out of Africa 100,000 years or so ago. So hopefully that clarifies. So again, out of Africa, you had one Homo erectus coming out of Africa, and then you had Homo sapiens coming out of Africa much later. So Homo erectus is like 1 million years, years ago, and Homo sapiens is 1,000, around 1,000 years ago, right? Okay, hopefully that clarified the matter. So the biological species concept applies to which of the following species? Again, biological species concept, the idea that they are reproductively isolated entities, and they are isolated reproductively from other such entities or groups. And it only applies to species that are alive, i.e. Homo sapiens in this case. Neanderthalensis, Ergaster, Erectus, you can't really test if they were reproductively isolated from each other. Based on fossil record, you can't say. You can say when two species are hugely different anatomically, like a mammoth and a dinosaur or something like that. But when the species are very close to each other, it's impossible to say if they were reproductively isolated. In the way biological species concept demands. Okay, 16. For the phylogeny given below, how many independent contrasts are possible? So the idea of independent contrast was that you want to reduce the number of dependent points as much as possible. So the idea was that when you look at these, this group here, so these two branches, you actually have to condense them, merge them to create one point, one data point. And these three would also form one data point. And so if you do the same thing, you're going to end up with 6 different independent contrasts. So it's literally just the branching points are considered as data points, right? And you can use them to analyze data. So trying to get rid of the phylogenetic relationship. Actually, look, let me just double check if you use the root as well. I'm pretty sure you don't. Yeah, well, actually, Sophia asked, does the first one at the bottom counts? That was exactly my question. Where is that? Okay. Yes. This should be one, two. Yes, yes, it would count about this. So the one at the bottom would count. So this is actually on page 178 of your textbook. And there's also an example of that, independent contrast, a test of the flammability hypothesis, which is on 179. Yes. Pilsenstein's independent contrast. All right, so female 13 banded ground squirrels breed once a year. Is this question? Part of, yeah, part of this is. During this breeding season, um, mate with several males, sometimes repeatedly. Behavior is best explained as female change their preference when given many choices. Survival is increased by multiple mating. Female sweetness is increased by allowing sperm competition. Multiple mating allows the female to forage on multiple territories unrelated to male's intersocial. So this can't be the case. Change their preference with mentions that doesn't make any sense. Breed once a year. Survival increase, fitness increase by allowing sperm competition. So sperm competition is not going to increase female fitness. So we are between B and D. So the most plausible one is D. The most plausible hypothesis to test is this one. Nepotism, defined as helped and I mean you should know what it means right now. So it is a which of the following statement is true? Adult survivors. So actually, I think this question is not. Yes, this question is not relevant. Nope. Which of the following is most likely to present incipient ecological speciation? So ecological speciation by disruptive selection. So you have to have two ecological niches so the species can differentiate. So guppy populations separate into island of Trinidad, mainland Venezuela due to the rise of sea level. So that's more allopatric speciation, but not really. Population of honey creepers has colonized the recently formed island of Hawaii. That's a founder, so it's a peripheral isolate allopatric speciation. Near shore deep water habitats in the pond, glaciers during Pleistocene. That's colonized, so this is also colonized. So I think the most plausible should be C. Yes, Sofian says C. 17 is D, yes. Lyra says it is D, yes. I think it is. 20 is. I think the last question is also not. Was it? This one also. this one's not. All right. So this one was the exam from 2014. So the last 10 minutes, if you have any question, any comments, anything, you can just ask. I'll be here answering those questions in the following 10 minutes. Can you explain number? Oh, sorry, what was number 5? Let us go to number 5. Please let me share. Okay. What was number 5? Oh, number 5. In allopatry, the males of two species of both have black and silver tail spots, which the female uses in mate choice. Where the two species occur together, one species lacks the black and silver tail spots, and some males have a black and silver spot posterior to the eye. Females select males. So the idea is that whenever you have the overlap of the populations, there should be selection against the production of hybrids, because hybrids are useless since these are offspring. So you waste resources on offspring that have low fitness, that are sterile. So a selection is going to select for that. That type of selection that selects against the production of hybrids is called reinforcement. So in this case, what happened was in areas where the two species do not overlap, they have a different mating signal. But where they overlap, they have opted or selected to have a divergent mating signal, so that they wouldn't confuse. They won't be confused to the extent that they would mate with the member of another species, right? Lawrence says, would reorganization of genetic architecture be a characteristic of founder event speciation or speciation through hybridization? That would be a speciation through hybridization. Founder effect wouldn't really have that. And by the way, Laura, hopefully I explained the question 5 properly to you. Hopefully that was clear. All right. So in case of Lauren's question, so hybridization, the idea is that the entire genetic architecture changes. Since, for example, you get from a diploid to a triploid or hexaploid, right? So you have 2N parents, and then you get a new species that is 4N, so it's the entire genetic architecture is different. So in speciation through hybridization. I don't know why I wrote this 2N to 4N. That's not very informative at all. Again, any question, any concern, we still have time. If you have exam for 2014, could you please explain number 13? 2014? Okay. Or 2013 or 2014? I'm sorry. So do we have 2013? Okay, let me just get that question. No, don't worry about it. That should be easy to. Okay, 2013. Okay, now I can share the document. 2013, yes. It should show up. Yes. Which question? 13. Okay, let's go find it. Oh, 13, okay. So in Colorado, Rocky Mountains separates the plains of the Front Range from the deserts of the western slope. Many species of local weed occur on only one side of the mountain. Which of the following below is considered a vicariance speciation? So vicariance speciation should be allopatric speciation, meaning that you have two populations in two different geographic locations and they end up being two species. So each bifurcation, so each one of these points is a speciation event, right? So we are looking for the ones where speciation events result in F and W and not just S. So we want the speciation to occur uh, with geographic isolations so as to classify it as vicariance, right? Because it's allopatric speciation. Uh, so a lot of the, so let's look at the ones that are wrong. Like in B, here, all these three branches, they have W, and you have two speciation events, right? So both